I flew 7,000 miles to buy this book, and I want to tell you all about it. Now, obviously, this isn't the only book that I flew 7,000 miles to buy. In fact, I bought about 36 books when I was in India in November and December. But The Pretenders by Avtar Singh is a very special book, and I wanted to talk about it today. And the reason why I want to talk about it today is that today is the 6th anniversary of the World Health Organization's declaration of a public health emergency of international concern, or what eventually became the COVID-19 pandemic. This book is about the COVID-19 pandemic. It's a fiction novel, and it's set during the Delta wave in India. It takes place from April to May of 2021. And even though it's like primarily set in India, it's actually set across 4 cities and 6 countries. The 4 cities are Delhi, Bangkok, Jakarta, and Beijing. And then we have the country of Germany, which doesn't have a specific location associated with it. And most importantly, the country of phones. That's right. This book makes phones their own country. And I think that's really, really important because one, it's an acknowledgement of the way in which our phones have become more than just simple devices that we communicate with. The chapters that are called the phones chapters usually take place where people are communicating between countries. So, for example, a guy in his 20s who has a girlfriend. She's in Beijing, he's in Delhi, they're communicating, and that's one of the phones channel, or somebody from Delhi is communicating with somebody from Germany. That is in the phones sections. And the great thing about the phones sections is because they are phones, it's all dialogue. And that really helps this story go very quickly, actually. It's a very heavy topic, right? The Delta wave in India was the most deadly wave. And to have a book handle that topic that can be so, so heavy, it can be really important to give the reader like some lightness in order to help that weight kind of lift a bit. And I really think that was an absolutely brilliant decision. I don't know if that was Avtar Singh's decision, the way he wanted to structure the book, or if that was something that his editor Shantanu Ghosh came up with. But either way, it's absolutely my favorite thing about this book, and the way that it handles that particular issue. The interesting thing about this book is that even though it's set during the deadliest period of COVID in India, there's not as much death in this book as you would think. So I'm going to give spoilers. I'm sorry. I tried to talk about another book and not do spoilers, and that's just not working out for me. So spoiler alert. So the first time we meet one of the characters, Raheem, he is taking his friend, trying to get his friend to a crematorium because he has died of COVID. That's kind of how we open the book. We open the book with a chapter called The Corpse Bearer, which is actually based on a short story that Avtar Singh wrote, and then he kind of like pivoted off of that short story, and the book moves beyond that. And so we open the book with the corpse. Okay, so it's very, very, up front and in there, and it definitely sets the tone for what it was like during Delta, in terms of, the restrictions that were placed on people, the ways, including even being able to move around very freely. It's one of the things I think Americans don't really grasp particularly well, because we never experienced the same level of lockdown that Indians did. Like the limitation of movement, the limitation of the absolute limitation of freedom and everything that happens during this period, that's really, really well articulated, especially I think in that first chapter. And then when it comes to, we would just expect for a book like this, and it has a cast of characters of about a dozen, I'm not going to get into necessarily the details of that, but you would expect for more of the characters to actually die in this book, to be honest with you. And they kind of don't. You have a couple characters who get sick and things like that, but you don't really have a lot of death after that initial push in that first chapter. And I think one of the reasons for that is that I think Singh is making kind of a point about the way in which the pandemic experienced by poor men like Rahim and rich men like Sammy, who lives in Delhi in a pretty well-to-do colony, their pandemics are not the same, right? And their experience of death is not the same. We do know that death is happening around him, right? Because you'll hear, there'll be a line, something like, and the ambulance came to take so-and-so away in this building over here, and we never saw her again, right? And so there's not a lot of dwelling on it, and it is kind of like punctilious like that. I'm an editor, and I don't even think I use that word right. But it is sort of like very matter of fact, right? Like, it's just, yes, an ambulance came and somebody was taken away and we never saw them again, right? So there's no dwelling on it. So death is happening, but it's not necessarily happening to the main characters. Now, we do have a main character, I guess we could call her. This is Sammy's dead wife. And he sees her as a ghost, I guess you would say. I don't know, I'll leave that up to you exactly how, you understand his relationship with her and everything. But that's the regular reminder that death is with these people always, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that people are dying of COVID everywhere. So I thought it was a really interesting way to handle that issue of death in the book. But yeah, I really, really wish that this book would get a publisher outside of India. Right now, like I said, it's not available beyond India. And in fact, I think this book even says not for sale outside India on it or something like that. And these kinds of stories are really, really important, right? Some of what we know and how we understand the Black Death in the 14th century is through Boccaccio's Decameron. And while the Decameron is not a factual, story about what actually happened, it gives us an idea about how people felt about the Black Death and how they experienced it. And these kinds of books are really, really important. I know that there has been some nonfiction written, but one of the things I noticed when I was in India is that we're starting to see a lot more fiction written about the pandemic, right? And it begs the question, what do we mean when we talk about the pandemic? What is the pandemic? When is the pandemic? Technically, according to the WHO, the pandemic is still happening, right? The emergency ended back in 2022, but the pandemic itself is not over in a technical sense, right? So to see books coming out like this, where they're really starting to think about and reflect on what the pandemic means and how it changed how we experience life, is such an incredible thing to do. So I was debating whether or not to talk about this. I really honestly love this book so much that I don't really have a lot of criticism of it exactly. The one thing I did kind of miss was whether or not contrasting the experience in the US with the experience in Asia would have been helpful to telling that story. And it's because at this same time that Delta's going on in India, in the US, everybody has gotten vaccinated, and that was the summer of hot vax summer where people were actually starting to get together again. I actually saw friends for the first time in a really long time in 2021. And I think that there's a level of contrast around the issue of privilege, especially because the privilege and class and caste do play a role in this story. So I think it might have been interesting to kind of pivot over to the US to kind of see that experience as well. But honestly, that's just wishful thinking on my part, and it doesn't detract from the book at all. It's just thinking about another perspective, right? So I can't give a better pitch to publishers, I don't think, than what is actually on the jacket copy. And that is, wait, where is it? Yeah, let me read it. Ambitious, lyrical, and reflective. The Pretenders is the pandemic novel we've all been waiting for. And honestly, major props to the Simon & Schuster marketing people for that line, because that is 100% how I feel about this book, and why I hope that publishers outside of India do, in fact, pick it up. If you are in India, I actually bought my copy at Kitab Khana, but I'm sure, available wherever you get books. So anyway, check it out.